welcome to What If We Can Change It All, the podcast, a podcast created by Movement.Medicine. My name is Janina, and I believe that we have the power, and therefore we can change it all. So this podcast is all about reclaiming your power. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode. Today I have a new guest, and her name is Christy. And Christy and I met, I think it is a year ago. Yeah, it is a year ago. We met through a similar space, and she was doing a certification there. I was her support coach, and we actually matched energy wise. And she's just busy with everything and anything, and it is. I really is. She's really inspiring, like everything that she does, because she really puts her whole heart in it. But I'm gonna leave it to you. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Absolutely. Well, hello everyone. I'm Christy Flis. It's great to be here with you all. And yes, it is so lovely, the journey of life and connecting with people across the globe and being here today. So it's interesting. So when thinking about sort of introducing myself, I have worn a variety of hats, as we all do in many areas. And even a little over a year later, previously I'd say I was head of education at Zoom, and this is what I did, and da-da-da-da-da, and that was a very traditional speak in a sense. And now I'm like, well, I am a photographer and integrated healer and a Reiki practitioner, as well as I am in process of making my first music album, or albums rather, and really embracing being a multidimensional being.
I think that's absolutely amazing. So you mentioned a bit of everything. And I know a bit about you, right? So how did you go from, like, of course it was always inside of you, and that side never left, but you just rediscovered it, I can imagine. But how did you go from, like, working at Zoom for all those years to, like, having this much of a switch and now, like, doing anything actually?
Yes. So it's interesting. So I grew up doing performing arts, so dance, music, singing, choir, musical theater, writing, directing, you name it. Like, that was my world when I was younger. And there was a certain point that I just kind of stopped. And we can talk about that more during this session. But it's interesting because I was also leading Women at Zoom, which was Zoom's first employee resource group. And I would hold spaces, and so part of that was doing journaling, and we do a write and reflect and kind of do it through unconscious mind, consciously, different prompts. And I was going back through all of my journals because I have them in various different books. I like to cross over between work and journaling and all of the in between because it really captures different points of life. And what I noticed is that every single one of my journal entries was like, you have to write, you have to sing, you have to write, you have to sing, you have to do this, like, and photography is in there as well, you have to travel, but it's like write and sing were consistently in these entries. And I can remember vividly having these moments, kind of nudges from the universe, spirit guides, whatever you want to, God, whatever you want to believe, or whatever you do believe in, is like these little nudges going, you need to write, you need to sing, like, you need to be doing this. And I have my little pup here on our session today, so I'll introduce this little Mira Miraculous.
Hello.
If you hear some barking, this is our little sidekick for the day. So all that to be said was that I kept having these nudges, and every time they'd happen in my conscious world, I would go, no, but I have to focus on work because this is the biggest priority. I helped the world kind of scale online. It was a huge deal. I was like, this is my main priority. So come to February of last year, and all of the tech companies were doing these different reorgs. Well, they decided to reorg education, which basically meant, hey, you're no longer with the company. Mind you, still rehireable, still into that. But it was just something that if you're out there listening to this and you have been in the corporate space and world, you're well aware of the trend that's been happening. And some of you I know have been going through this multiple iterations, and it has no reflection on your success or skills. But I found it very comedic because the universe always has comedic flair. that it was like, cool, this was your reason why you can't go do all of these things. So guess what? We just cleared that for you. And we gave you some runway to go do it. So go do it. So it was a, push. Like, I don't think if that hadn't happened, I don't know if I fully would have invested my time into following these passions. Because there always would have been something that I had to do.
Yeah, I absolutely love what you're saying there, and also the way we actually sometimes keep ourselves small and not go for the things we actually want because we have all these musts and needs that we have to do in our heads, and then all of a sudden when that falls away, we're like, oh, this is actually a good thing because this means I can fully focus on myself. I can do whatever I want to do and have fun in the meantime. So I really love that you tapped into that as well because as you said, like you have been not suppressing, but you have been like denying yourself this side of you, right? This side that you grew up with, the side that was always in your heart, always in your subconscious mind as well. So I love that this was a way for you to see, oh yeah, it's time now.
Most definitely. And it took me on, reflecting on this past year, such a wild and amazing journey. So, having that change and shift, I'd like to say it's that easy. And you just go, great. You do have that moment where you're like, great, I have time to do this. But then reality and all of these kind of preconditioned notions and systems and reasons why you haven't ventured out of your quote unquote comfort zone kind of kick in. And so I took a reset. I went and traveled with my pup to Europe, which you can do. So if anyone has questions listening to this, feel free to message me and I'll happily walk you through that process. But really took some time for reflection. And then that's how sort of the album and music part came about because I had a good friend that is an amazing producer. And it was like, okay, let's go do this. And it wasn't until the second half of the year that we actually made that official, which led to going to Peru just in January to work with another amazing producer on a remix album. And yeah, such a journey. And I can remember the first time that I got in front of a mic. Mm-hmm. Mind you, this was my world, like when I was younger. Yeah. I spent hours, like so much of my life was in this area and field, but I just stopped doing it. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot more of other reasons why that I also had to reflect on. But I can remember the first time that I was in front of the mic and it was like terrifying because I'm like, I don't know how to do this. And then all of a sudden this switch came on and like this inner child in me was like, oh, this is what you love to do. Oh my gosh, we're doing this. This is so exciting.
I love that. And I actually really remember this because I remember we had one session together and you were telling me like, it was a little while that we had a call together and we had our call together and you were just telling me and this is happening and that is happening and I'm starting recording and my album is coming and blah 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 blah. And I remember like you being so happy but also me being so happy for you because you could really just hear all the excitement in your voice. But what you could also hear, and I think this is really important to mention, is the belief that you had about yourself behind it all. Like the energy that you put behind it, and I could already hear it like in that session that we had together. It was just, you were so certain. And that's the power of certainty because it really shows.
Yeah. I mean, and I always remember, I think it was Beyonce. That's like, there's one person I'm going to invest in. I'm going to invest in myself. I think I resaw that quote as I was going through this process. And I'm like, yeah, like, what if you actually take the time to follow your dreams? What happens on the other side? What if you take that leap and everything, it's so much more amazing than we can even imagine. But I will say, if you're on that journey, you have these dips and moments of being terrified. And I think, as you know, from some of our prior sessions till I made that decision, which it did take me, I already knew the answer. Internally, as you mentioned, like I already knew the answer, but it took a while for me to get there in real life terms to make that commitment in real life. Like up here internally, I'd already made it, but it was the actual leaping to go, okay, you're here, now it's time to leave. But leading up to it, you have those moments of you can easily, I guess what I want to say is you can easily slip back into the preconditioned of the comfort zone area of things where it's like, well, this is the world that I was living in, and no, so maybe I should listen to everybody else and follow that. And I think that is the thing, is that it's so important to listen to your inner compass. And it's your life and not someone else's, so you should really follow your own inner compass versus listening to outside sources.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also really good that you're mentioning that, like, it was scary and sometimes it was in a low energy and sometimes it was hard, or like the self doubt was here, or like the what's the word? The the what's the word in English? You can also can't help me. The Wow. Well, I'm gonna say it in different words. Like the comfortableness from the comfort zone. There's a word for it, but I can't I can't recall. But like how comforting that is for you, right? But also that you had this little conversation, or maybe many conversation with yourself. Like, okay, Christy, do you really want this? Okay, so let's just do it. Whatever happens, it's fine, right? And I think that also shows the humanness. Like, I also recently had this big leap that I needed to take on my own, and I was like, okay, but what is holding me back? And the only answer on that question was me. I am holding myself back. You are holding yourself back. If you want to take a leap and you don't do it, the only person who's really holding you back is yourself. And to realize that is pretty confronting, not always that pretty, but it does get you on the other side, and it also results in like you actually doing what you want, and that feeling is really hard to describe.
1,000%. 1,000%. I think that's such an important thing to say. It's like, again, knowing that when you're in that, yeah, it's not pretty. It's not. It's so uncomfortable. It's so jarring. You feel lost. You feel all of the feelings, like everything. But on the other side of that is like so much alignment with yourself and so much alignment and magic and just like, yes, I'm glad I did it. Almost not to say pride, but kind of pride in a way. Like, yeah, I did that. But I think you brought up a really interesting point, and one that I've been really reflecting on, just even in the past few weeks as well. Because as you go on this journey, there's always more levels and layers and things of the journey. And it's being cognizant of where you're giving away your power. Because exactly, it's like the one standing in front of that is actually yourself. And it can get so easy to fall into, oh, it's this person, or oh, this person's like, nah, you're the one that's giving your power away in places. And so there is a process of also reclaiming your power and reclaiming yourself and pieces of yourself to stand fully in yourself. And it's probably a whole conversation that could be like hours long in truth, but it's so like you don't always pay attention. If you're not paying attention, that you can indirectly fall back into a pattern or fall back into something, and then it's like, well, wait a second, I get to tell it. You get to tell your own story, I guess, is also at the end of the day.
I love that you tapped into this. And it's actually funny because I think you don't even know, but that's like the mission of my company is like it stands for like reclaiming your power. So I love that you like I love that you like tapped into this because it is so important. And like reclaiming your power is not only about like going to the doctors and get a recipe of medicine. It's not only about that. It's also like giving your power away towards yourself and like how you treat yourself, how you are with yourself, but also how you rob yourself from certain experiences. Yeah, I absolutely love that you tapped into this. I do have one question though, because you already said we're gonna talk about it, and I want to talk about it. Why did you stop?
Why did I stop what?
Why did you stop like your whole creative side, your whole creative being, like everything that you did?
So I wouldn't pinpoint it to any one specific thing. And I think that's really important to note, because a lot of times when you go through this process, you're like, what was the one time? And I've been asked this question quite a bit and reflecting on it myself quite a bit. And, it was a series of things compounded over time, right? So a lot of the beliefs around can you make it in a career in fill in the blank XYZ versus I think a lot of people out there can relate to this. Like, you've got to go down the traditional path, and that's going to set you up for success. And to be fair, generationally, there's a lot of generational traumas and things that have come up that, precede our time, which we're helping to kind of alchemize and transmute to say it's okay. You can follow your dreams, and you're not going to end up, desolate. And it's so there's a lot of the preconceived patterns and notions around what it means to follow your dreams, and a lot of the world that we live in has really operated from a sense of fear and lack versus abundance and following those passions and dreams. So you kind of settle into, I guess this is my life now, or I guess this is what I have to do. And there's going to be moments and seasons, we'll put it as seasons, right, where you have to go and you'll do things that you're like, this isn't my passion, but it's going to allow me to go follow my passion. So I'm going to go do it. I'm going to follow that so that I can open that door for myself. I was also in very unhealthy because of a lot of things going on in, certain dynamics and things that, we'll put it this way. As a young person, I ended up in some very unhealthy relationship dynamics. And that also, over time, created sort of a lack of sense of self in a way. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, that's something that a lot of people can relate to is it's not like you choose to go into those dynamics and say, great, I'm going to, sign off on like stopping my dreams, not following them, not following my passions, not following these things. They just sort of kind of compound over time in small little ways until one day you wake up and you're like, wait a second, what just happened? Now, what I will say is that everything has a plan and a focus. So a lot of the things that I went through, I almost see as like training grounds for today. Like if I hadn't gone through that period of time, I probably wouldn't be so strong and so resilient and so into this is where my path is and why it matters. And, also being really intentional with the music that I'm creating and why it's meant to say, okay, if it's going to take you to a dark place, it's not going to leave you there. Mm-hmm. There's a path out, because there is a path out. And there's a lot to be said for that journey. And it is, I can't even speak to it to the fullest extent, but when you're in those situations, it really does open your eyes to a lot of the world. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where a lot of the healing kind of journey kind of comes into play. But I would say it was compounded over time. But I can look back and I almost tracked, like yesterday was St. Patrick's Day here in the US. And I was going back and I found pictures of me singing in choir in Ireland and going on tour. And I can vividly though remember like, my mom was super sick at the time. There was a lot of stuff happening in the family where things were very scary in the sense of like, are people okay health-wise? What's happening? I was in school. I couldn't do anything about it. There was like a lack of control. And then that I led into a dynamic that makes sense now to me why I ended up there, because ultimately it's like you look for support in any places and it's part of your journey and path. And yeah, I want to say something more to this, but I don't know exactly what that is. But I do think that there is like beauty in the breakdown. to really be quite honest, there is such beauty. I know we talked about, it's not pretty, but there actually is a lot of beauty in that breakdown, because what is created next is so beautiful. And there's the ancient kind of Japanese technique of like when something breaks apart and it's brought back together with gold, so how like it's even more beautiful than the thing that was whole to begin with.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I think that's really beautiful, because the interesting thing is often when we go through our like lowest lows, at the time it's not nice, it's not comfortable, and like life gets to suck sometime. Like it's okay that life sucks sometime. I think I also want to highlight that, because nowadays there's so much bypassing and we all need to be happy and everything, but sometimes life sucks and that's okay. But the beauty is that after those sucky times, right, we can see the lessons and the gifts that we actually got to receive from those moments. And that actually make those sucky moments, or however you want to name it, it makes them pretty. It makes them beautiful again, because that's a point, that point exactly is the moment that you get to reclaim your power. The way you handle
Yes.
yourself in those deep, deep moments.
Yeah. It's so, so true. It's like, yeah, like sometimes it looks like absolutely crying and bawling on the floor, falling apart. Like, and it's one of those things. I'm glad that you brought that up as well, because um I've been doing a lot of reflecting on kind of the masks we wear, and in my corporate world, and life, actually, just I would say life in general, because I'm thinking back to like my Instagram and relationship dynamics and everything that was happening. It's like I was so good at wearing a mask of everything is fine. And like,
Me too.
yeah, I'm
So
like,
guilty of
it's
that.
gonna pick out this, like, nobody would know. I'm like, I just went into battle the day before, the night before, and here I am. Okay, let's go work, let's go do these things, and was so, so good at it. Like, I mean, pro, all stars, right? It's like tied up in a pretty bow, make it look great. But what was happening internally, what was happening externally in other areas was like, whoa, like, wow, it wasn't all rainbows and butterflies and sparkles and magic. Like, it was magic in the sense, but it was definitely not, just be happy and everything's great. So I remember vividly when I was under lockdown in London in 2020, which was an experience of itself. That's like kind of when everything came crashing down. And I can remember that because even being on Zoom, I was like, okay, I have this all together. Here's my performative aspect. Here's my stage presence. I've got this. And now it's like, oh, now we have to get real. Like, now you got to be vulnerable. And I'm doing an acting class right now, and it's on this topic as well about vulnerability. And I was sharing this just in the last week or so about how going through this journey that I've been on has really also opened me up into deeper layers of being able to act on film, act on stage, because before, when I would do my acting, it would be very much, I have a script, I'm behind the script, I'm the character, like, this is this. But it's like such a beautiful thing to be able to bring that depth of vulnerability and to share it, versus just, again, in the performative. But it was things came crashing down when I was like, wait, I can't hide behind this anymore. And that led me ultimately on my healing journey.
But that's great. That's great. Like, it doesn't matter if the masks are there. If they fall off and you do exactly what is needed, then it doesn't matter. It's great. Because that means you're really a pro in wearing a mask, because you're also a pro in, like, taking it off again.
Exactly. I'm like, okay, well, here we go. Which is like also really jarring when you start to let ego go, and ego always wants to be like, let's pick back up the mask. We know, like, that's our safe spot. It's like, well, if we're letting that go, gotta be real.
You gotta be real.
And that means being real with yourself and with yourself first and foremost, and that's been a process also going through this music creation and just kind of my journey in general is like, being fully authentic with yourself means going and really going there.
Yeah, exactly.
But then it's okay. It's actually on the other side quite all right. The things that you thought you were afraid of, you're like, oh, wait.
Exactly.
Not scary.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the fear of this. It's the fear of the fear that's scary.
Yeah, because the fear of the fear creates only more fear, and then you become into this fearful loop, because the fear of the fear that creates more fear, but creates more fear, and then you're like, what the heck am I actually doing, because I feel so fearful.
Well, exactly. And here's the wild thing is, like, when you go through this process, like, a lot of it has to do with things that happened when you were little that you didn't have control over, that you didn't. And so you kind of did these things to be safe, and they served a purpose. But there's also, like, every part of you is gorgeous, but it's like there's these parts of you that are, like, bigger than life, that again like filled into this, like, be small to be safe place. But it's like, wait a second, that was the kid that, like, wanted to go sing on stage and perform, but then something happened once, and then it was like, oh, we have to be quiet. Or oh, that's wrong to do. I was just at a restaurant the other day, and this little kid, this little boy said something that was very honest for what observant and honest, we'll put it that way. And immediately, like, the parents are like, don't say that because it's embarrassing or whatever it may be. And then you hear the little boy going like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And I'm like, no, I thought that was hilarious because the sheer honesty, like, we need more of that today.
We really do. We really do. Not
Yeah.
not only to other people, but mostly towards yourself as well.
For
Because if you
yourself,
start
yeah.
if you start sugarcoating everything for the outside world, you also start to do that internally because you're creating this pattern.
Exactly. Instead of being like, yeah, let's go play, like my pup never questions if she barks at a bird, that means that she's a dog. No, that's normal.
Mm.
Like, she's never questioning herself and going back. And I mean, obviously, that's been part of also her upbringing is like very important not to go into training that was associated with shame, but more of a positive reward system. And it's like, we need more positive reward systems for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, that shame and blame, like, it doesn't need to exist at all.
Exactly. That's the same upbringing I chose for my dog as well. Like, he really likes it when he does something good, right? And he also knows exactly when he does something that is not okay. And then you can see him
Exactly.
because he is like this human. He has like this human eyes. So he looks at me all sassy, and I'm like, you know exactly what you did now, Benjamin. You know exactly what you did. So I don't even have to say something. He just got to it like
Exactly.
that. He knows.
Right? I mean, and that's the thing, like, right? Like, we're always, as humans, going to be our own worst critics. So why add to that? Like,
Exact. I wanna talk about the album.
yes.
So it's a very broad question, but I'm gonna start with this question first. When you have too many questions, you know that feeling. What would you say your album is about?
So I think it's a lot of actually kind of what we've been speaking about today. It's about sort of the human journey and, um, you know, being really honest and vulnerable in that, in the not okayness of being not okay, but also how we show up in the world for ourselves and how there is a brighter side, even though you can't always see it in those moments, and about, I'd say, resilience and bravery and adventuring and taking those leaps into finding your passion. But also, I would say it was really important, and it's continually one of the intentional pieces behind the album that I keep getting back to is like not to leave it into too much of a dark space, but also not to leave it too much into a light space, because again, that is not being honest with actually your soul's journey and how things actually unfold. It's not, again, it is magical, it is beautiful, but when you're in that moment, it is like so not pretty and so difficult and so hard. And so it's kind of taking you on that journey. And so really intentionally with the album is bringing you from being in those places to, yeah, you get to like dance and be free and celebrate life in a beautiful way. And it's going to mean different things for sure to different people, based on wherever you are in your journey.
Do you feel like, and maybe this is a hard question to answer because I'm not sure how far you are with the album, but do you feel like this album is really a closing of a chapter for you?
I would say it's the start. But I would say this album, probably for my own journey with it, is a lot of reflections into my past soul journey. And as the team that I've been working with knows, they have gotten to witness some of those moments of going through the darkness and through the shadows and out on the other side. Because it does require a level of depth to be able to share that.
Yeah.
And to be able to put that into song, into music and expression. There is a lot of formulaic music out there, and I love it. I have it on my playlist. It's what I've talked with the team about as well. I love it. Don't get me wrong. But when you do go to the super vulnerable places to share that, it means really going there, right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of that heart and soul has gone into each song and each lyric, and being very intentional with what the lyrics say as well. So it's been a very intentional album. Of course, when I started this journey, I was like, yeah, I want to go do like a pop album that's just solely like pop. But I was like, wait a second, do it. Add something bigger. So being really intentional with that. But I would say that it is also very reflective of the journey that I've been on this past year as well, in kind of going into the unknown. And that's something that I really want to bring people along with on that journey, is like, yeah, what does it mean to go into the unknown and take those leaps and know that there is something on the other side, but you don't know what that is, and you don't have the map or the place or the way to follow to that, but you have tools, you have things that you're gathering along the way to find that.
Yeah.
But yeah, really taking people along that journey and really being living in kind of authenticity and integrity with it, which is, again, terrifying because it means being your whole human self. Again, I say this, I keep reiterating it because I think it's so important that it is so magical, it is so amazing, it is so important to follow that path, but like you are basically like, what's the word for it? Like I'm thinking of like, like you're exploring through a jungle and you're going out there. Like there are some songs that again reflect to this back, but it's like you're like you're an explorer, you're an adventurer, you're taking your ship out to sea to sail, and that is what ships are built for, right? They're built to go out to sea.
Yeah.
And you got to take those steps to actually do it. And you might be in the storms and you might be in those moments, but that's not going to be forever. And so that's always important to know, because when you're in it, you feel like that's it. Storm's happening for 10. It's like, well, no, you got to go get back to the wheel, guide it out. And there's going to be a beautiful island or destination that awaits on that other side. And having that trust and faith and knowing that that is true. And so that is a lot of this as well, is taking people on that journey.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I think we shared a lot today, but I do want to ask you, what would your ultimate tip be for our listeners?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you asked this question, because part of my background, and I'll just share this real quick, part of my background was in psychology. That's what I got my degree in. And I always struggled with it because for so many years, and we're just now starting to kind of get out of that with, again, being more open to different healing modalities, being able to talk about our journeys and our experiences without being publicly shamed. And that was something that was really difficult when I was growing up. When I'm sure many of you listening, same thing, is that like if something was happening at home or in a relationship or at school or in a certain dynamic or at work, you didn't talk about it with anyone, right? Because it was like, don't talk about it, pretend you have, again, getting back to this mask thing about everything's fine when it's really not. And the shift that's happened is like going from a direction of there is something wrong with you to, oh my goodness, if you start to share these things with each other, you realize, wait, you experience that? I experienced that too. Hold on, we're not so different. And this goes globally, right? So it even goes across different cultures, religions, everything is like, and languages, is that we're all so much more similar than we realize, but we just don't share our internal worlds of what's happening. And we're like, oh my gosh, you're going through that. And guess what? Suddenly then you realize you're not alone. And so I think what I'd like to leave everyone with is, healing is, it's not about fixing something that is wrong with you, because there's actually nothing wrong with you. You're experiencing life, and you're meant to be a student of life and experience life. And so it's about this journey of self-discovery and becoming your truest expression of self, and uncovering and discovering all of the magical layers of magical you that make you you. And it is a very exciting journey to be on. So just wanted to let you know that it's keep on the journey, and it gets more magical as you discover more of you. And again, healing is not something is wrong with you. Not at all. Healing is that journey of self-discovery and a journey of life, which is amazing. And what a wonderful time to be alive.
Exactly. I have nothing to say about this. You just said it all. I do want to ask, how can people find you?
Yes, so I will preface in keeping it real with the journey, which is also part of this, is that I am in process of getting my website launched, right, and also I will be doing a, not to say relaunch, I'm keeping everything kind of on my Instagram, and I'll be announcing the launch of the website, the launch of music, how to get signed up for community events and different things from their launch of my photography, which is going to take you on different travels as these things have been created, and some of the stories behind them as well. And so you have different access points. But I would say go to my Instagram, my current Instagram. It is, fair warning, it's just going to be like me on my journey with like a lot of stuff happening. And then you'll see when the shift happens and they'll be, here is the branding, here's a more cohesive story, and the launch for the other places to go. So that is Christy_Flis. I
I
believe
will
it'll
put
be
it. I
in
will put
the
it in the description and in the screen as
perfect.
well.
Fantastic. So that's where you can find me. And if you have questions, of course, feel free to reach out as well. And yeah.
Good. And last question: do you have any release date already for your album? I actually don't know.
Woo, okay, it's in process, and I'm so excited to share this with you all because that's been one of the biggest things that I'm like, this music needs to get out into the world. That's for creating it. It's not just for the sake of creating it, but creating it and sharing it. So we will be doing a phased launch through the Instagram. We'll be keeping you up to date, but looking like a summer launch. Just get started.
Ooh, I love it because she already like it was months ago actually, but I already heard a snippet and I was already loving it, and that was just like a first or a second draft. So I am very excited about this. So please keep an eye out on our Instagram page, and whenever it is released, I will also share it on my pages as well, so you won't miss it. I truly, truly, truly want to thank you. It was so nice to speak with you again. Thank you so much for
So
like.
good to be here with you all.
Sorry.
It's so good to be here and be here with you all and see you.
Good. I'm really happy about that. What was I saying? Yeah, just thank you. Thank you for opening up, sharing so honestly as well, and just this nice little chat. Is there anything else that I need to share? No, as you guys know by now, we have been going through a lot of changes in movement medicine world. So I would say just keep an eye out on the page for anything new. There is a free event coming soon, so keep your eye out for that as well. And thank you so much for listening again. And I wish you a beautiful day, evening, morning, whenever you listen to it. And we will see each other. Well, you will hear me next week. Bye bye.